Hi, I'm Jamie Lau, clinical professor at Duke Law School. I've been asked to make a video to explain why it is I believe the governor should use his authority to grant executive clemency to reduce the prison population here in North Carolina. First and foremost, I'm known as an innocence advocate. The Wrongful Conviction Clinic here at Duke Law School represents men and women where there is evidence of their actual innocence to remedy their wrongful conviction. Wrongful convictions and clemency are directly linked together, however, and I'm going to explain that in a moment. Clemency also affords the governor a chance to demonstrate mercy to individuals who are deserving of a second chance and to remedy other injustices beyond just wrongful convictions, where it is that individuals are sentenced disproportionately with respect to the crime and the criminal conduct that they commit. So they receive a disproportionately long sentence. The use of clemency is particularly important today because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Individuals who are incarcerated are at risk each day they are in a facility where they're in close contact, close quarters with other individuals and cannot take masking or social distancing, the practices that we are practicing here outside of prisons to keep ourselves safe. So it's become a dire situation, and I hope that you will join the individuals that are calling on the governor to utilize his authority to decarcerate North Carolina to help individuals who really deserve clemency without any risk to public safety. The first thing I want to talk about is the link between clemency and wrongful convictions. Clemency has really two purposes. It's a fail-safe to ensure that the criminal justice system gets it right and that there's a mechanism in place to ensure that injustices are corrected. There's really no bigger injustice than an innocent person serving time in prison. The governor has the ability to remedy cases where there's questions about the guilt or innocence of the offender by granting clemency and commuting the sentence, allowing that individual to go free. Unfortunately, the governor in North Carolina has rarely exercised his authority in that manner. Recently, the case of Ronnie Long is a perfect example. He was released in August after it was found that there was widespread law enforcement misconduct in his case. But even before August, when the pandemic began, on the basis of the indisputable misconduct by law enforcement officers, we had asked the governor to commute his sentence to protect his health, and the governor didn't. So clemency can be used to correct injustices, but more so, it's important with regards to whether or not at the front end injustices occur and wrongful convictions happen. Because one thing that occurs as a result of the long sentences that are associated with criminal conduct here in North Carolina and throughout the United States is individuals plead guilty to crimes they didn't commit to avoid the risk of being sentenced to life without the possibility of parole or other harsh sentences where there are no opportunities to have release early by demonstrating that you're not a risk to society. You don't have to take my word for it. Of the known DNA exonerations, 18% of the people who have been subsequently exonerated by DNA entered pleas to avoid a harsh sentence. So sentences that have no meaningful opportunity for release are directly responsible for wrongful convictions. And if clemency gave or afforded people an opportunity to demonstrate their rehabilitation and be released, then wrongful convictions would occur less frequently. Finally, in North Carolina specifically, a pardon of innocence, an act of clemency by the governor, is necessary for individuals who have been wrongly incarcerated to receive compensation. So the governor using his clemency authority is essential to making whole men and women who have been wrongly incarcerated. This wall in our offices at the Wrongful Convictions Clinic at Duke has the story of 8 of 9 men who have been exonerated based on the work of the clinic. These individuals collectively served well over 100 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit. Unfortunately, in North Carolina, the only way that these men are compensated by the state for their wrongful incarceration is through a pardon of innocence by the governor. The current governor, Governor Cooper, has failed to grant a single pardon of innocence to deserving individuals. Among the 9 men that we have assisted in securing their release, only Lamont Burton Armstrong has received a pardon of innocence from then Governor McCrory after serving more than 17 years wrongly incarcerated. Mr. Armstrong, sadly, passed away in August 2019 after only 7 years of freedom following the years that were stolen from him through wrongful conviction by the state of North Carolina. Another injustice here in North Carolina that can be remedied through the use of executive clemency is disproportionately long sentences with respect to the criminal conduct. Trafficking is one particular example. Here in North Carolina, an individual can be charged with trafficking merely on the basis of the quantity of the drug that is in the person's possession. So a trafficking charge can be rendered whether or not the individual had the intent to sell or distribute the drug in their possession solely based on quantity. The result of that is that the individual is subject to a mandatory minimum sentence that's disproportionate to the criminal conduct that can be proven by the state. The governor can commute these sentences to provide these people who are best suited for rehab as opposed to lengthy prison sentences an opportunity to get the help they need to return to their communities and loved ones, given especially that they had no intent to sell or distribute drugs and were incarcerated merely on the basis of their addiction. A second justification for the use of clemency is it's an act of mercy on behalf of the state. There are many individuals who have served time well beyond what's necessary to demonstrate their rehabilitation and commitment to be a better person. At sentencing, a judge takes information about the defendant at the time and then is trying to make a prospective determination of what's necessary to effectuate the goals of criminal law, incapacitation, retribution on behalf of society, and what it takes for an individual to be rehabilitated and to stop committing the acts that put them in front of the judge to begin with. Well, now, after decades, we know who has demonstrated their rehabilitation and no longer warrants being incarcerated. And clemency can show on behalf of the state the mercy that these individuals have earned and warrant on the basis of their behavior improving rehabilitation. One individual that I'd like to highlight is a recent client of the Duke Law program who was released after 32 and a half years after demonstrating not only his rehabilitation, sincere remorse for the conduct and crime that he was involved in, which was a second-degree murder that resulted in a life sentence. After 32 and a half years, his sentence was modified and he was released on the basis of the efforts he took to improve himself as a human being. He spent all that time in prison without accruing a single infraction. Never once did he act in a manner that was deemed unacceptable by the prison. He earned 2 degrees, 2 associate's degrees and a bachelor's degree while incarcerated, and committed his life to God. His faith and religion then became the sort of guiding principles that he's lived by ever since.
Yes, I just got out of the prison system. I did 32 and a half years. I got a second chance to be at home with my family, my grandkids, my daughters, to breathe in fresh air, not in the penitentiary. I got a chance to get a job now and live a normal life in freedom. And I'd like to thank Dr. Lau and Alan and their whole crew for putting in a lot of work and caring about us and helping us to get out here.
We prayed for his release for years, and we just felt like we didn't have resources. We didn't have financial ability to help him. So just for a second chance to come and help him, and we're gracious, and we appreciate everything that you all have done for us, and I hope and pray that you can do the same for many other men and women who are deserving of this second chance, because my cousin is definitely deserving of this, and for you to choose him, thank you so much.
Finally, in addition to using clemency to provide justice in cases where injustices have occurred, to demonstrate mercy on behalf of the state to individuals who have demonstrated their rehabilitation. The broader use of clemency to decarcerate the prisons here in North Carolina is fundamental to this state living up to the ideals that this country was founded upon. In America, freedom and liberty are supposed to mean something. Unfortunately, the data tells us that there is a class of individuals, Black North Carolinians in particular, who have had their liberty taken away from them at a far higher rate and far easier than their white counterparts. In North Carolina, 52% of the prison population consists of Black individuals, while they only make up 22% of the population at large in this state. No one can deny the racial violence that has occurred in this state in the past, the racial legacy that continues to exist in the South, and that has infected our institutions as demonstrated in the composition of the prison population. Liberty has been taken away far too easy in certain cases, and that can be remedied by broader use of clemency and more broad action by our governor. Additionally, just look at the rate of incarceration in North Carolina. In North Carolina, we incarcerate about 630 citizens to every 100,000 citizens that live or reside in this state. That incarceration rate places North Carolina higher than authoritarian regimes in China, Iran, and other places where we perceive liberty as meaning less than we perceive it here. For North Carolina, this country, to be the beacon of freedom that it's perceived to be, more must be done to protect liberty, to find other remedies to rectify or deal with behavior that's considered inappropriate in our society than just putting people in prison and putting them there for long periods of time to remove them from society, when through other appropriate means such as rehabilitation, education, other investments, those individuals can be productive members of our society rather than warehoused away out of sight and out of mind.